Welcome back to The Road Forward, a podcast for trucking industry leaders. My name's Alex, and this podcast is brought to you by TruckSpy, the all-in-one fleet management platform built to empower your drivers to be productive, compliant, and safe. And we got Matt and Flint today. Matt, how are you, sir?
Up? Good. How are you? I almost don't recognize you without those massive headphones, man.
Yeah, we were talking about right before Flint jumped on how literally my Apple AirPods they just died. They croaked. That's it. So we're on Plan B today. But Flint, how are you?
Doing great, living the dream. Yeah, another week in paradise.
I like it. Okay. Speaking of paradise, okay, I want to send you guys over just to some fun things on Reddit. Okay, Reddit is just the source of all the joys of trucking. Okay, so I'm gonna send you guys some links, and I want to get some live reactions from you guys about what you think about this. Okay, and obviously, if you're an audio listener, you can't see the picture, unfortunately. But as they're pulling it up, it's essentially a semi truck with like home security cameras mounted on like the wind wind fairing. I don't know what that thing is called, but it looks a little bit ridiculous. And the comment is paranoid much, which I mean, is this the IoT like trucking future where we're just like mounting home security cameras?
I mean, that's like the what he has mounted on the mirror. It's like the $40 camera that my wife bought on Amazon to watch our baby when a babysitter's here. Right? Like sits on top of the TV. I don't know what he's got going on back here on the wind fairing. I mean, this guy's got some cameras on the wind fairing.
Yeah. Right. Look, I've seen the articles. Okay, apparently freight theft is on the rise. Okay, but my goodness, I don't think this is exactly the direction you want to be going. Because I mean, what do you lose an MPG with those things just sticking out there? That's ridiculous.
He's got 3 pointing backwards and 2 pointing forwards. My goodness.
Right. So
I'd be a hypocrite. I would be a hypocrite though to hate on this guy because I'm always like, hey, more cameras the better. I mean,
yeah,
it's been my stance. I mean, I'd be a hypocrite. Is this potentially like one of those, like an autonomous project vehicle? Potentially.
A really low budget autonomous project?
I don't know. They use off the shelf stuff when they're workshopping things, but
right.
Maybe so. I mean, they are mounted pretty. They're mounted pretty well. So maybe so.
I mean, not to throw. It's funny. It looks kind of ridiculous.
It's fun. Okay, but we're trying to lighten the mood because whether you're an Eagles fan or a Kansas City fan, I don't know. I don't even keep up with the football, but apparently Superbowl was a couple of days ago or something like that. And so this next one on Reddit is just a lighthearted Super Bowl, whatever, 70, 80, 40, whatever it is. I don't even know. I don't keep track with sports.
I sent it to you guys. 57, right? 57. I mean, I watched the game just to make sure our audience doesn't think we're completely disconnected tech nerds or something. I watched the game. I love football. I love the NFL. That flag at the end was total BS.
I agree. They should have let him play.
Yeah,
right.
Just
but
to make sure. Anybody who's listening would be just enraged by your comments, dude. It's like everybody watches the Super Bowl.
Yeah, 1 in 4 American households tuned in. There was like a record-breaking Super Bowl for viewership.
That's good. So all I know is Rihanna was apparently in the in the halftime show. I almost called it the mid-time show.
I actually, because my girlfriend she came over to watch the game. So for the first time in ages, literally since like the whole Justin Timberlake fiasco from 20 years ago, that's like the first time I watched the halftime show.
Right.
So it was as insane as it looks from the images. But okay, what's going on here?
Somebody posted, apparently Rihanna was like doing some kind of stare down or something. I don't know. Me confidently, the quote for this image is, me confidently pulls onto the scale with a light load. DOT officer doing the Rihanna look. It's like, it's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of Super Bowl humor. Since there really wasn't much, the news cycle seems kind of slow. So since there really wasn't much going on, and then the last one,
topical meme. Good job.
Thank you, Matt. See,
Okay,
I appreciate that.
let's-
And the last one is a slight safety concern. Okay, for our audio listeners, it looks like somebody was recording with their cell phone. A truck driver, some kind of trailer. It's like an end dump or something, but it's a video essentially. The brake chamber acting as your truck nuts.
Dragging on the ground.
On the concrete, right? That might be something you want to get checked out, right, guys?
Yeah, back to the DOT cop. Just go ahead and proceed to the bay.
Right. So, this source of fun trucking stuff
Doesn't look essential though. He's rolling.
Yeah, a brake chamber.
He's making it happen there.
Well, I don't know that brake chambers are critical to forward momentum. Right? I think they're only important if you want to stop the forward momentum.
There you go. That's a good
until the airline breaks and there's no and the trailer locks up, right? Yep. He's gonna be in real trouble.
Right. So do your pre-trips, boys. But I would want to kick it off with talking about trucks that maybe won't have that necessarily the problem. Obviously, SuperTruck 2 from Freightliner. It's like I've seen the articles all over. I'm on the Freightliner website, and 12% reduction in tractor's aerodynamic drag, 12% reduction of tractor rolling resistance. They partnered up with, I believe it was Michelin for this. Where was the logo? Yeah, Michelin. So they partnered up with Michelin to make some super small rolling resistant tires. And then, of course, 5.7% reduction in fuel consumption and 50% more efficient AC system, right? And apparently it now uses a 48-volt electric system. So essentially you can run your AC and your heat off of the battery instead of idling your truck. So maybe they're eliminating the need for APUs or something. I'm not sure. But obviously this has been, it's been a pretty big thing because everyone's super impressed. Some of the comments I've seen is like, hold on. Before I go to the comments, I want to say at the bottom of the Freightliner at the Freightliner website, it says, a special thanks to the U.S. Department of Energy, which co-funded this program. Without them, there would be no Freightliner SuperTruck 2. And it's like, interesting. Okay, so it's like if you're telling me blatantly in big letters that essentially the government is funding your research to make a more efficient trucks, which I mean, granted, some of the stuff that they are doing is neat. Like they have active aerodynamics, so it closes off the gap between the truck and the trailer, which makes it more whatever, fine, cool. But all this stuff is adding weight. All this stuff is adding complexity, maintenance, PTIs, and more than likely, the average guy buying a truck is not going to spec it out that way. Right. So I don't know, Flint, have you seen this truck obviously, because you mentioned last week on the pod, as an engineer, did you see this truck? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, yeah, I mean, a lot of, cool tech, right? I mean, and probably makes a difference. I'm not like an aerodynamic. I don't know that much about aerodynamics besides, right, you just want to reduce resistance. So that obviously probably makes sense to not have to idle and run your AC and heat from batteries. I mean, it's cool. It's good. And of the things that our government is funding, seems to me to be a relatively a worthwhile project.
It's always refreshing when you hear something practical coming from the government.
Right, and that's their whole thing. It's like, this isn't some moonshot or some super future out thing. This is the thing that we could actually do tomorrow, right? But some of the comments were a little bit funny. Is essentially is like, oh, we're doing all of this work just to get 12 miles to the gallon on a truck, because that's what essentially that's what it's going to get about 12 miles to the gallon. It's like all of these things combined will only get it 12 miles to the gallon. And then a lot of people were asking why isn't this like a hybrid power plant? You got the 48-volt battery system. It's like, make the batteries a little bit bigger and make it a hybrid or something. It's interesting how the focus is on all of these other things, when in reality, just, I don't know.
It's actually pretty damn good. 12 miles a gallon. I mean, that's a really big improvement though.
Right. But the current Freightliners get 8.
Well, I know.
Yeah, but over time,
4 miles a gallon. Come on. That's a lot.
Isn't that like a 33%?
It's like a 50% improvement. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So they were saying it was a 5.7% improvement over the SuperTruck 1. Whatever they released maybe a few years ago. I don't know exactly what that thing looks like. But to talk about the tires, though,
my pickup truck only gets 15, right? And it doesn't weigh 80,000 pounds. I mean,
Yeah, I know, but who's going to get all of these things? Who's going to get the active arrow that opens up when you're going down the highway? Who's going to get the auto-leveling suspension?
For 4 miles a gallon, if I am a carrier that's hauling dry vans or reefers up and down the road, I guarantee you I would for 4 miles. I mean, I don't know what the truck costs. Like, it would have to be insanely expensive for it not to make sense. Like, if it's a $50,000 upgrade, it probably makes a lot of sense.
Okay.
Especially if fuel at, $4 or $5 a gallon?
Yeah.
Here, I was in Arizona last week. It was $5 in a lot of places.
Yeah. But about the tires with reducing rolling resistance, like doesn't reducing rolling resistance also then reduce like your stopping capabilities because it's like less traction essentially, right?
Well, not necessarily, but rolling resistance is like a very small piece of the resistance that you're fighting against.
Because that's what there was a whole video about that, like, oh, we reduced rolling resistance a lot, and I was like, well, doesn't that mean it's just gonna make it like 12% reduction of tractor rolling resistance, and specifically they worked with Michelin for the new tires or whatever. I think it's interesting, just because like apparently like I don't see how these things will add up to a significant difference, but it is interesting to see things that are actually practical and could be implemented in the near future, essentially. Yeah. I think that's really cool. Speaking of the near future, Matt, I think you want to talk about some legislation or a guy that was in front of Congress or something. What did you see?
Yeah, just this Chris Spears. And this is a couple weeks old, but it's been kind of sticking with me. I've been thinking about it because he outlined a few points to this House committee, the House Transportation Committee, Transportation and Infrastructure, just highlighting some of the big, concerns for the industry. So overdriveonline.com, I actually pulled them up because they were the first big hit on this topic. And so they pulled together.
Who is Chris Spear?
He's the ATA guy. The president, is that his title? President and CEO, right. Chris Spear.
Okay.
Sorry, I said Spears.
I didn't know. Okay. So he's sitting down in front of, you said, the House Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. And he highlighted some of the current industry challenges.
Right.
And what were some key
highlights?
So
overdriveonline.com put together kind of like their main points that he brought up. So main concerns, main things, the challenges facing the industry. And it was just funny because two of the 5 major things facing this entire country are essentially just things manufactured by California, created by California with their insane legislation and insane regulation. But just the quick highlights. I mean, parking, which is, I think, definitely a big concern, definitely something that we should tackle. I think if government's going to get involved, that would be something to certainly get involved with. Congestion. Couple of these things informed by some other things that are happening. So parking and congestion are only going to get worse if we electrify transportation in the short term, at least if other things don't change. But so California, of course, with their net zero policies, like really aggressive things, are one of Chris Spears' like big challenges that he has to face down. He just thinks it's completely insane what they're doing, totally unrealistic on the timeline to get to net zero by 2035, I think is the current thing. So he's like, it's going to fail, and all it's going to do is create a ton of problems in the short term. California's AB5 is another big thing that's creating just havoc in the industry. Independent contractors are packing up, leaving California in droves. And it's just going to create a ton of supply chain issues. So I just thought it was interesting that, basically California is accounting for half of the major issues. I always like the opportunity to mention my new home state here in California and how pragmatic and practical and realistic they are with everything they do. But
and how friendly they are to trucking businesses.
Right. I mean, all jokes aside, it's really
Right.
scary stuff. But
right.
Yeah, it's been on my radar lately.
Yeah, it's funny because I was listening to some other podcasts about electrification, and they like, and some of them were California residents, and they're like in full force and full agreement of like, yeah, electrification is the future, but to force it, it's just a lot of things won't be ready. Just there's a lot of things not ready for full blown everything electrification. So,
I mean, if you think parking is bad now, imagine if you have all these vehicles trying to recharge on the road. That's just one of the downstream types of unintended consequences of this kind of stuff. So,
right. So essentially, it's refreshing to hear that somebody, this guy Chris, he's sitting down in front of the government and actually highlighting issues that are affecting the common man, so to speak, the common truck driver that's out on the road that can't find parking at 4 or 5 p.m. Can't find parking to save his life. So he's highlighting some of these issues, making them aware and in front of the people that will be passing some legislation, that's refreshing. Correct?
Yeah. I think the ATA does a pretty good job of being a voice for trucking. I'm sure a lot of people will disagree. I'm sure they're not perfect, but they do seem to have like a realistic finger on the pulse of what's going on, and they're a voice of reason in government and other things in the industry.
Right. And Flint, any opinions on some of this? Looks like congestion is a problem. Truck parking is a problem. AB5, and electrification. Any opinions on any of those?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows what all the problems are, right? I mean, the big question is how long do you have to talk about them before government maybe actually does something, right? I don't know, just a thought, like maybe we could find solutions, but
right. We might be crazy. We might be talking about it for an extended period. That's for sure.
But the good news, right? The good news is that the jobs report, which is what I want to talk about, record-setting jobs report, our great government added 74,000 employees, right? Over the last month, 1 month, January, they added 74,000 employees. So that's really exciting. I mean, maybe they're gearing up to actually solve some problems. They need some help, or they're just continuing to bloat. And finally, all of Biden's IRS agents are getting hired. So now we're all going to have to get hounded by the IRS, which can't even seem to do the simplest of things like open their mail.
Right.
So that's good news, I guess.
Hold on. Everybody's announcing layoffs, and the government hired almost 75,000 people in the last month. Right?
Yeah,
is that correct?
75,000 people. Yeah, in January.
Goodness gracious! And what was the trucking industry like? What did the trucking add jobs?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Like the big sources of employment, and this again was like off the charts job report, right? Like nobody expected what came out in the jobs report. Like, we all hear about layoffs, but that's really not showing up in the data. And so, the big adders of employment, right? The big gainers, leisure and hospitality, private education and health, professional and business services, and then followed by government. And transportation and warehousing, specifically trucking, gained very moderately, right? 4,100 employees. And what I think is interesting about that story is if you look at the last 3 months, so the fourth quarter of 22, trucking actually shrank in employment and got hit relatively hard. Transportation as a whole shrank in employment. And now in January, right, like everything is turned around. Right. We're starting to see growth again, which is, I guess, good and bad, right? I mean, I think what it highlights is that consumer demand is still pretty strong given inflation, which is good for the trucking industry. I mean, we continue to see news about FedEx and UPS and all these guys furloughing people, but somebody's hiring. Right. And this, again, keep in mind the jobs report is like it accounts for for firings and hirings, so it's a net gain in employment, right?
Right, and that's the issue. Is like, because I've seen numerous articles now about how the rates are still cheap. It's still brutal trying to book loads, and it's like, well, how are we still adding jobs when the rates are still really bad as a whole? And so it's like, if you like we mentioned last week on the pod, by raising the minimum insurance, that would get some carriers out of the business, essentially, or out of the industry, so to speak, and like that would be the only way to essentially raise the rates. And it's like, but it seems like there's no break. Like they're guys that are working hard trying to make it through, they're not getting a break because everyone's still hiring or something, or consumers are still spending money, I guess.
Yeah, in construction and manufacturing both added a ton of jobs. It really doesn't make a lot of sense to me, right? Given the economic cycle and where the Fed is and all like you would expect rate increases that happened last year would begin to damper the economy, but it doesn't seem to be the case. And I don't know. I mean, there are some people out there saying, well, the jobs report is crazy because everybody's taking a second job, like labor participation continues to climb. People who haven't participated in the labor market since COVID, inflation's really taking its toll, and they're coming back and saying, oh, now I actually need an income. And maybe that makes sense, right? Because leisure and hospitality is a huge gainer. So, that would be like an hourly type role that you could do at night or on the weekend. Maybe that makes sense. Look, the other thing I thought that was really interesting about this report is the wage data. So if you look at transportation and warehousing, the average employee is bringing home $36 an hour, which is up quite substantially from where it was this time last year. So we're not only seeing wage growth, but we're also seeing employment growth, which I think is an interesting story.
Wow. So, I mean, yeah, Matt, go ahead.
I was just thinking about these people. Who are these people that spent 3 years watching The Price is Right on their couch? And just like, I think, you know what? Maybe I'll work again. I'm like, who are, after a month, I'd be clawing at the walls. I don't know.
Right.
Well, I think part of it though is the gig economy, right? I think a lot of people went into the gig economy. They're like, I can drive an Uber, I can do DoorDash, I can do whatever, and make kind of roughly the same amount of money that I was making working and not have to deal with going to the office every day or whatever. And maybe that's changing. Maybe these people are picking up second jobs in hotels. That's kind of what this looks like. I don't know.
Right. Or, I mean, leisure, that'd be like you're working at a bar or a restaurant too, right? Wouldn't leisure kind of fall into there? So it's like you drive Uber during the week, you pick up a couple of bar shifts, you hang out with your college buddies or whatever the case may be, and you do the bar shift, and there you go. You're making at least, $1,000 or $1,200 a week between those two things. Yeah. And you don't have to ever, it's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, look, and I think that the good news here is for the drivers. Mm-hmm. Like, I think that this is good news for truck drivers, right? Like the driver market is still strong. Pay seems to be increasing, even though rates are kind of crappy right now. Right. I think that that's the underlying story. Now we'll see how this plays out. Like, obviously, this report may be a bit of an anomaly, and it may actually go the other way.
Right.
This month when February comes out, but we'll see.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I was looking at the volumes, like how much volume of freight is being moved right now. Even though the rates are, from what I've seen, not good. From what everyone's saying, they're just not good. The rates are kind of cheap. And again, maybe they are saying it's cheap because of the year that we just, had. Relative. The record year that we've had over the last year and a half or so. But it's interesting because the volumes, the amount of freight being moved is still higher than 2019. So even though we have this, we feel like we're in a massive slump, right? Like, obviously we talk to trucking companies every day. We talk to carriers all the time. And even though sometimes we hear it's really slow right now. It's a rough season. It's whatever the case may be. And, the articles and whatnot show it. It's like the volumes are still higher, noticeably higher than 2019. So before essentially all the craziness. So if you're out there, not having a good week or a good weekend or not a good trip, just keep in mind that volumes, that they're still good. Consumers are still spending, and based on the jobs reports that we had, like everything seems to be doing all right. Any final thoughts, Matt?
I mean, I don't know. It's hard for me to stay optimistic, so that's good to hear. It's good to hear your refreshing Gen Z take. Everything's hunky dory, nothing to worry about.
That's fun.
I mean, the way I see it is like we're still kind of emerging from the 2+ almost 3 year nightmare. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how much of this is true, like gains versus just kind of recovering from the nightmare. I'll just call it that.
Right.
I don't want to get any more political than that, but I don't know. So it's like, are we just finally, hopefully, returning to sanity? Yeah.
To normal.
Anyway, we'll go with your take.
There you go. I appreciate it. The positive approach. The cup is half full. Wins this week. Okay, on the podcast. Well, thank you so much. Make sure you leave a like or a comment down below. You guys, you know what to do. I appreciate you joining, and then we'll see you next week. Thank you.